What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Let that lion roar, Chuck. I'm so glad to have you in the studio, brother.
It's great to be here.
What is up? What is up? What is up to all the difference makers out there? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. And I'm excited. We got a legend in the building today.
A legend.
We got the legend Chuck Colby in the studio today. So excited how it just kind of worked out and we're making it happen. So, you know what? This is redundant. I say this quite often. So if you're a regular listener, pay attention. How do you meet people? You know, how are you meeting people? How do you meet great people? Because like when you get out there, whether you're in business, you're in sales, you're like, how do you build your tribe? You know, when I started my business 6 years ago now, it was over 6 years ago now, I didn't know most of the people that I know now. The people that I'm with most of the time, I didn't even know existed. And so it's so cool when you get out there and you can align and just meet your tribe and meet amazing people out there. I call Chuck, he's like the Pied Piper. Like when you go to events and if you ever go to an event that Chuck is at and you're talking to people in the crowd and you ask them, how'd you find out about the event? Oh, Chuck brought me. So super cool. But so as you're out and when you're meeting, when you go to events, when you do things, when you're meeting incredible people, take note of where you're at and make sure that you're doubling down and continuing to go to those places. And so I met Chuck originally at an American Cancer Society event.
Yeah.
And they had just incredible events. I got to be a speaker for an event. It was on adversity, and I gave my presentation with two other speakers that were there, and Chuck happened to be in the audience. And so he came up and we started a conversation, and he brought up that he was in a little band called 3 Men and a Tenor, and I'm like, shut the front door. No way. Growing up in Owasso, Michigan, I remember like in high school every year I'd go and watch 3 Men and a Tenor, and I loved watching them. So it was like meeting a superstar in front of me, and so it's really cool because we were able to develop a relationship out of that, and we've served on a board together for a little bit of time. And
yeah.
We were American Cancer Society Brothers in Pink at the same time in
right
2019, so that was super cool. But we have a lot to learn from Chuck. So from entertainment, to owning the Sun Times and Dexter, there's so much to learn from a legend that we have in the building. So I'm super excited to kick it off. Chuck,
a
man,
legend.
welcome.
And here I am sitting with the man of the hour, the Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. My main man, Jason Tracy.
What is up, brother? And you always have the best introductions.
It is so good to be here. I'll tell you what I find really interesting is that you have an office in a building, grit and lavender, you say.
Yeah.
Your podcast is gritty. And the event where we met was I'm trying to think of the exact title, but
God,
it was
right.
Grit, something and Grit.
I didn't even think of that. You're right.
And so, there's a whole lot of grit.
There's a whole lot of grit. Well, and it's needed. And,
it is needed.
Man, you look at were the day after the Detroit Lions lost, or did you watch? Were you a Lions fan?
Yeah, I'm certainly aware of the
circumstances. And so, listen, their whole slogan's grit, right? They wear it on the shirts. That's their whole motto. And there's a lot of disappointed Lions fans. And man, even looking at Dan Campbell and the team, they were all disappointed and sad. But you need adversity. You need to fall
absolutely.
on your face.
I think that the greatest growth always comes from overcoming adversity and to going through hard times. I absolutely agree with the old adage that hard times make strong men, and everything that follows, I think, is also true. And we certainly are at a time in our history where there ought to be a lot of guys getting strong right now because it hasn't been easy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. But again, when you push through that, what are you capable of when you can get through that challenging time?
Isn't that the truth? Absolutely. So it's been a fascinating couple of years, and it's interesting. I'm thinking about going back to that whole Cancer Society thing. There was a talk that followed that one up that was all about pivoting. And I'm trying to remember if you were somebody on that.
I was
panel as well.
Was that the one at the back office studios in Nipsey? It was.
I don't remember if that was the location, but I just remember that being another talk that I remembered you being a part of, and I think those two things, being able to uh, you know, get through the hard times, and not just through enduring, but through making some changes, through pivoting. This has been, I think, the real secret for anybody who has been uh, surviving, or thriving, the past couple of years. It is because you're good at those two things. You're good at enduring and getting through and saying, well, it's not exactly what I wanted, but we can make it work. You got to be able to do that right now in this world, I think. And the other part of that is, I think you need to be able to be a little agile and make a move if you need to, change direction just slightly, because even the things that you do have that you want may not stay on that same course. That's certainly been the case. I think about my own situation going into COVID. I had, I think, what would have been a record-setting year for myself, from a standpoint of clients that were going to do video projects with the company I was working for, and new commercials and new websites and marketing things that were happening. My group was gearing up for our 30th anniversary as a group. And we had these plans. We were going to go back to Germany for another tour. We were going to tour all over the United States. And all of this
Canceled.
All of this just fell apart. And I lost 90% of my clients within the first 3 weeks of COVID. And they're all like, you know what? We're just going to postpone it until April. When the world opens back up, we'll come back. We'll do it. And then it was May, and then it was June, and then it was November, and then it was, I'm not working here anymore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And that's actually part of the reason that I ended up at the newspaper to begin with. Really kind of a crazy turn of events. It goes back several years, but I bumped into the guy who owned the Sun-Times News when I was the marketing director at the Encore Theater in Dexter. Something I was really, really passionate about. I love the theater. Really, really good friend of mine is the artistic director, and I was on the board for a while, and I became the marketing and development director because we didn't find anybody that we really wanted for that position. And what it took was somebody who was really passionate about the theater, somebody who was connected within the community, somebody who had some sales skills, and who really cared about what was going to happen there. And Dan Cooney is the director. By the way, you should get him on here. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And we were talking, and he said, who do you think of these candidates that we've got? Who's right? There's a couple of these that have really, really good sales skills, but they're out of the community. They don't know anybody here. There are a couple of them I can tell are really passionate about theater, but maybe don't know anything about sales. There are a couple that I think are just out for the money. Who do you think? And I said, well, we need the person who's the combination of all those things. And he said, that's you. And interestingly, I hated the job that I was doing at that time going into that. And I said, I could do it for a period of time. I can't do it forever, but I could do it for a period of time. And I did. So, it's another moment where I kind of pivoted going into that. But then I met Bob Nestor. He's the guy who owned the newspaper before I did. And he came to this event. I said, Dan, we've got to throw this press event. We need to get the newspapers to come to us. It's not enough to just send our press release and say, hey, write a story about us, or just print our press release. And now I know so desperately how much that's not enough. Coming from it, from the, this side of the table at a newspaper, those press releases are important. But when somebody calls, when somebody says, hey, this is really important, can you take a look at this? Those are the things that really do open our eyes. As a publisher, that's something that's desperate to me. It's like, yeah, okay, we'll take a look here. And nobody's doing it. So it is interesting. There's an opportunity for you right there, by the way. So I was at this event. It was Guys on Ice, the show we were putting on at the Encore Theater, and Bob Nestor, the owner of the paper, came, and we were just having a good time after the show was over, having a beer, just discussing the theater. And he said, you should be selling ads for my newspaper. And I said, wow, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm busy doing this right now, making sure that this theater, moves to the next level. That's what we're really going for right now. Either a capital campaign here in this building or a new building that's going to be bigger. It's not enough yet. What we're doing right now is not enough to sustain us. And he said, well, you would be perfect in this capacity. And so Bob and I bumped into each other several times over the next couple of years, always at these mixers, which I had just started going to at this time, to get to know people for the theater. And then all of a sudden, like you said, I've become, sort of the de facto king of networking events, just because I started to realize how important they were to go to and how I would always meet somebody, get a takeaway. And so I went to a ton of them. And now, I kind of refer people to them and say, hey, you should really go to this one. This would be good for you. Because I do have a lot of experience in that area now. I don't know if I can make money referring people to networking events, but I certainly, should be able to.
There should be a way to make money doing that for sure.
There should be.
Yeah.
There should be. So Bob and I would bump into each other over the next several years. And every time I'd see him, he'd say, you'd be great. You should really consider selling ads for my newspaper. And I'd always say, well, it's not the right time. During COVID, my wife and I took a little vacation, a little getaway, and we went up to Lansing to this little bed and breakfast. Our first thing out, it was like our anniversary is June 14th. So I think it was probably like, the 14th, 15th, 16th, something like that of 2020. And on the way back home from the bed and breakfast, I said, hey, do you have any reason we have to get home right away? I mean, you doing anything? She said, no, I thought we'd, take the back roads and maybe we'll find a farm stand or something, get some flowers and some, vegetables or something. So we're driving through the little burg of Gregory. And there was a farm stand on the side of the road, and we stopped, and the farmer happened to be outside. And we're like, oh, hey, we could put on the masks if you want. I don't need the mask. We're outside. It's a beautiful day. Let's just talk. He said, I don't get to talk to many people. And I'm like, okay, great. So we just started talking. And he said, I'd like to expand my operation. I'd like to open a farm stand. There's this little red house on Dexter Pinckney Road right there at the bend near Portage Lake. And I said, oh, yeah, my friend Bob, who owns the newspaper, he owns that building that used to be the headquarters of the newspaper. Yeah, that's it. The Sun-Times News, right? And I said, yeah. He said, well, could you talk to him for me? And I said, sure, no problem. So I called him when I got back home. And he said, well, I'm leaving for Whitefish Point right now, and I'm going to be there for 2 weeks on a fishing expedition. But when I come back home, we can talk about this. So, a couple of weeks went by. The guy called me back in, mid-July and said, hey, we're coming up on the time when, I'd like to get a farm stand. We want to sell corn and watermelons and, to go right into the fall. If you think you can help me meet this guy, I'd like to meet him. And I called Bob. We set something up on the calendar and we went out to see this guy, and they made a deal on the spot. And Bob said, I owe you lunch and a beer. And so we went through hell on the way back home, and we stopped at the Hell Creek Saloon or whatever it is. And we're just sitting there, and, dummy me, the first thing I say is, so Bob, with COVID, how's everything going with the newspaper? And he
stepped right into it.
Oh, I did. He just kind of hung his head and said, I don't even really want to talk about it. And I said, why? What's going on? He said, well, we've been out of print for 2 weeks. I was financing the printing of the paper myself for the last several months. After 2 weeks of the world being shut down, every advertiser pulled their ad. And it's an important time to have a newspaper and keep people connected, but somebody's got to pay for it. And it's been me. And I just can't do it anymore. And I think we're sunk. And I said, oh man, Bob, I'm so sorry. I wish there was something I could do to help you. And he said, there is. Go sell some ads for me. And so now he's got me, right? I mean,
he's got you right to the emotional.
The advertising agency is basically, on hold, until we come out of COVID. 3 Men and a Tenor's not been on tour, since March. And I said, well, I've got the time. I could try. So he gave me a hit list of 50 businesses that would potentially come back and advertise. And I got about 15 of those come back over the course of 2 weeks and 3 new ones. And he said, wow, you're doing better than I thought. How would you like to run this whole thing and eventually own the newspaper? And I said, well, that's different than go sell some ads for me, but I'm very interested in that. And as much as I like working for somebody else and like what I was doing, I think I really like
Your vision's
this.
probably
I
different.
think I really like this. And we got into it, and we published our first paper in the end of September of 2020. And we're coming up on 3.5 years that I've been publishing this paper, and there really is no looking back at this point. It's been an amazing journey to get to this point, full of great moments and incredible trials, some really weird, unexpected things, a couple of potential lawsuits that we just dodged. And it's the thing, Jason, that I think is the most interesting about my journey at the newspaper right now is that I didn't realize how much people valued it prior to working there and being a part of it. But there are so many people who really do depend on that community connection, depend on that newspaper to tell them what's happening, and more so. And I think that this is, a tribute to you and what you're doing and why you're gaining listeners all the time. You do it with heart. And I believe that our team really puts this paper together with a great deal of heart. And it's not just something where people are making money or making commission on sales or something like that. This is something that is of real value. It is a service industry more than anything else, to be in the world of local community newspapers. And I can't tell you how rewarding it has been to be a part of this, I had lunch today just before I left town, and there were a couple of ladies at the table next to me. And we just started chatting, and they said, oh, do you work here? Are you local? Is this for your town? I'm like, yeah, I work in that building right there. I work for the newspaper. And they said, oh, the Sun-Times News? And I said, yes. And we love that paper. And it's so interesting.
That's so cool.
To hear this and to know how many people really do care about that. And it's made me rethink a lot of things, actually, about the value of community. And it's made me want to expand that offering. And there is, of course, a financial component of that, if I do that, that could be more profitable retirement for me and, good fortune for my family. But more so, it's something that I'm realizing I really want to spread. I want to make sure with every publication that we're publishing, we're doing a really good job, and that it matters.
You're bringing the heart.
Yes, I really think that's the critical reason. That's the reason why I talk about this all the time. Actually, if the newspaper is of value to the readers, then there's a reason for the advertisers to want to advertise.
Absolutely.
If it's just some trashy little publication that comes in the mail once a week, it doesn't matter. But
nobody's picking up and reading it.
But if people really want it, really value it, then it's got value to the advertisers. If it's got value to the readers, and that's really what we're trying to build here, is something that does transcend that, and that matters. That is a service where we can talk about the schools, we can talk about what's happening at City Council, we can talk about the water problems in Saline, we can talk about the millage that didn't pass in Dexter, we can talk about the senior center and what's happening there, and will there be a new building for the senior center? These are all such desperately important stories for the people in these communities that we cover, and it's it's an awesome responsibility to be a steward of that information and to know that what we do with it really matters.
It's so cool because I think we have probably a line passion here is that passion for small town America. Because
without
community based, right?
Yes.
Because you look at maybe you mentioned Saline and Dexter. I think of Brighton, right out
Brighton,
of the gates of
exact type of community. Yes,
but you look at something like Detroit or Ann Arbor, it's probably a lot different. There's not, there's more of a mass and things like that. But like being able to serve those communities and like walk around Dexter, I could just imagine how much your cup is filled up from that.
Oh, it really is. It really is. And then when we do something special like right now we're getting businesses in Dexter signed up to do the kids ads. And when I talk about the kids ads, everybody gets this huge smile on their face. The sixth graders at Creekside Intermediate, they all participate. We get 70 or 80 businesses in Dexter to sign up and sponsor the ad space in the paper. We don't really make much with the paper. We're just covering the costs.
Yeah.
And what happens is 3 or 4 different sixth graders draw an ad for Ace Hardware, and we take it to Ace and we say, hey, here are the 4 ads that were drawn. Which one do you like? We're going to print this one in the paper. And then we put them all up in a big collection online.
That's such a cool idea.
But we print, the first pick in the paper. And we did this the first time, I think 3 years ago. And last year, we opened this up to the businesses to give a little thank you, and you wouldn't believe how many businesses came up with these little gift bags for the kids who drew their ads. And, it was great. I mean, it wasn't, maybe 2 businesses gave something only to the one that they picked. Most people said, okay, like Bush's. Bush's gave a gift bag that had a $20 gift card and a Bush's t-shirt and some, candy and soda pop or something. It was a fun little bag.
Yeah.
And I felt, like, oh man, don't show that to all the other kids. They'll be jealous. They'll want to draw for Bush's next time.
Everybody be fighting over Bush's.
But it was really cool, and the whole community really rallied behind this thing.
Yeah.
And the 6th graders were the hero of the day. It was marvelous.
Such community.
It was really, really cool. So we expanded that, and we started doing that in Chelsea too, and we started doing that in Saline. And look, I think one of the number one things that I've learned is that people love to see their kids honored for doing something good.
Yep.
And so, the cover of the newspaper, as often as I can, I want to put a kid there. I want to put a scholar athlete or a musician that's done something spectacular, or a young artist that's drawn something brilliant. I want to feature that. And one of the things we've just done, and I love this, we've just made the decision to specialize the publication per community. So people in Dexter will now receive the Dexter Sun-Times News. People in Chelsea will get the Chelsea paper.
That's great.
And what I had inherited was a paper that was the same, that went everywhere. And there's some value to that. It's interesting. There are stories that are a little bit more regional, but people in Chelsea don't really need to know about the water main break in
Saline.
In Saline. And people in Dexter don't necessarily need to know about this bill that didn't pass in the township, in Saline Township. So it's
probably easier for, like, if you have a feature on a scholar athlete or
absolutely,
something,
absolutely. Well, especially if there's like a new business, like there's this new restaurant opening on Jackson Ave, which is equidistant to Chelsea and Saline, a little closer to Dexter. But just inside Ann Arbor, it's this place called Base Camp, which is a Himalayan food restaurant.
This where fresh forage.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly
probably in your paper. Actually.
Probably
in
the paper.
Yeah.
Probably in the paper.
Yeah.
And that's something that's a great example of content that's going to be in every paper. That's that's in the shared space. And probably the ratio will be like in a 16-page paper that goes weekly. 6 of the pages will be specifically Dexter, or specifically Chelsea, or specifically Saline, and probably 10 pages will be common, because the things that are happening at, University of Michigan Hospital, that are happening, community-wide, festivals that are happening, we want to include everybody. I'm interested in the Celtic festival that takes place in Selene. So I'm not going to put that only in the Selene paper. That's going to be in all the papers because I think
It's a regional event.
It's a regional event. But the little stuff that matters more in one community and really is kind of like, oh, I don't even know. I don't know why we're learning all this stuff about Dexter or Chelsea. Yeah. Where's Selene? We're trying to limit that. So tune down the complaints, tune up I love that our paper is all Selene now. It's important, I think, to really serve in a special way.
Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture, are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people. Whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder, powered by AI, is able to solve those problems for you. For me as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder, powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking the step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impressed from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether.
Like that.
So let's shift and take it back
Let's
a little
shift.
bit, because we've talked a lot about how you've kind of just ended in these opportunities that with sales, with your relationship building. Where did that come from?
Have
you always been that way?
Yes, I have. When I was a kid, my dad was an amateur radio operator, and he would drag me out. My mom was not in good health. And so anytime we went for something, my dad would, drag me along, partially because I'd be out of my mom's hair and it'd be an easy day for her. So I went to all of these ham fests with my dad, and I didn't have a license. I wasn't doing anything. I was just a, 10-year-old kid. And what I would do is I'd have $8 in my pocket, and I'd walk around and I'd see something interesting on the tables. So this is where all of these ham operators went to sell their wares. They had last year's radio that they're selling, and this spool of wire and a soldering iron and all this stuff. And I loved technical stuff. I just loved to look at it. I took stuff apart. Man, some of the worst spankings I ever got. I took apart this TV. I'm like, well, I thought I could put it back together.
Oh no.
Whoops. Whoops, daisy. But I'd go to these things with my dad, and I'd go buy some crap, and then I'd walk around and I'd say, "Hey, mister, do you know what this is?" And he'd, "Oh, yeah, this is what's it? We use this for this." I'm like, "Do you want it?" You're like, "You're selling it?" Well, that or trade. And so all of a sudden I was like wheeling and dealing as a kid. I didn't even know what I had. But what I overcame very, very quickly was objection. Because if somebody said, no, sorry, kid, I was on to the next day. I didn't care. Hey, do you want to trade? And pretty soon I got kind of good at this. And I would say, hey, do you know what this is? What's this do? Okay, cool. Thanks. hey, are you interested in an oscilloscope? I've got this oscilloscope, and you can take the readings off of the RF from your oh yeah, that's not a bad little device right there. You interested? I listened to all the guys talking about the language, like, you interested? And I learned this language. And so I'd go with $8 in my pocket. I'd come back with 150 and some pile of garbage that, my mom would always say, Dale, you're not supposed to let him bring all this stuff home. So yes, it was something that I started doing very, very young.
You were like the original Gary Vee. Like, he teaches people to like go to garage sales and like, like, and like just kind of build like, there's like those challenges that people will be on where they like start off with like buying one item and then they like kind of trade out and they end up with a boat at the end or something.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, I'll tell you it is also another part of me that I cannot deny. I love a deal. I love a thrift sale. I love to go to like Treasure. Did you ever go to Treasure Mart in Ann Arbor?
No.
Oh, it's the store that I miss the most.
That sounds like it was a
Treasure Mart was other people's junk and somebody's treasure. And I would go through there and, I wasn't making a lot of money when I was, first out of college. And so I outfitted, along with my ex-wife, we outfitted that house together in a very, very thrifty manner. And we had a lot of really cool and unique stuff because we went to these thrift stores and we got all this stuff. Really, before thrifting was very cool.
Yeah.
It was more necessity at that time. Now it's cool.
Yeah.
Which is
back then it was just survival.
It was just like, yeah, we're not going to Target for that, won't be going to IKEA. This one's $8. So it did make me somebody who, maybe more than anything, saw value, in the items that I saw. So, and maybe that's, true of the newspaper. I saw value in the newspaper beyond, what was there necessarily right on the surface. And again, we've nurtured that and worked on that to make it worth more. And now, Mr. You interested? We're selling ads at a higher rate because it has more value now. So that's been interesting. You see how they brought it back around like that?
No, I love it. That was skillful. That was really good. I was like, I'm going to bounce it back out here, but but no, that's skillful because, I mean, bringing up the obvious, if anybody listening is like, 2020 was probably not the time to start a newspaper business, or you would think,
not,
right?
It was not, for sure. And yet at the same time, it very much was.
Yeah.
Because
you saw something.
Yeah. So I saw something, but also there was never a time when it was more desperate for people to have connection and to have some good stories about what was happening and what was going on. And so our inaugural, issue was this great feature on the Encore Theater in Dexter and the new building, and what was coming. And so just imagine this, Jason, for the people in Dexter particularly, but all over Washtenaw County, because I think the Encore is a gem that's, a regional gem, not just something Dexter should be proud of, but that everybody in Southeast Michigan should be proud of and should be, going to. The first issue, the cover of the paper this is something. Remember when we used to go out? Remember when we used to go to theater? This is what it's going to be like. It's so cool. And here are the renderings from the artist. And, I think that's somewhat responsible. You got to plant the seeds of hope within people. And I think we did a lot of that in the fall of 2020. And, hopefully got people kind of into the idea that, oh, you know what, we might go out again. We
may be able to leave our house. It'll be great.
And I know I needed that. I desperately needed that.
I mean, I would imagine you're a person that gets energy from being around other people.
Yes, very much so. It's interesting. I did that personalities test, and I have a lot of traits of being an introvert, which is interesting. But I am definitely also an extrovert.
Mhm.
I do get charged up by being with people, but I absolutely love my solo time. You know,
What month were you born?
September.
Okay. I thought you were a Gemini like me. That's
Is that a common thing for Geminis?
It's a common thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like a whole double twin thing, and you
Yeah,
know,
right.
I get so much energy. I love being around people, but at the same time, I could spend hours by myself, and it's like when people come home, it's like you're home already. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for
I
you,
love everybody. I love my family. I love being around people, but
it sounds
solace is great.
It sounds like to me, the ultimate day for you would be riding your Harley to a Harley rally. You get the solo time and you get the group time.
That's probably why I like riding the Harley. You do get the solo time
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
drive time. Even in the car is like I'm not a big talker while I'm driving. It's just like a kind of a in my zone.
Well,
listen to music.
It's interesting. That's one of the things that I loved about being on tour with 3 Men and a Tenor for all the years that we've been doing it. I love the experience of a road trip. Even if it's solo, if it's, you know, two of us in the car, if it's all of us, you know, there's magic in all of those numbers that really is very, very special. And I've enjoyed that so much. We haven't talked very much about 3 Men and a Tenor.
I was going to say, like, speaking of being masterful, we're circling it back to exactly where I want to go. All right. You're good. So for thinking about that, and you know, I think about, you know, we've told the story of where you're at now, and again, the sales thing kept appearing, but like thinking about starting a music group and having to promote and like just talk about like how did that all come about?
Well, okay, so you know, here's the thing. We got started as a group at Michigan State in the men's glee club, and we really, honestly, we got started to fill up time in a concert. There was this concert that was scheduled. It was January 17th of 1992 at the Grayling, Michigan Holodome at the Holiday Inn. And on the bill for that concert, the Michigan State Men's Glee Club and the jazz band. 2 weeks before the concert, the Glee Club director walked into rehearsal and said, "Gentlemen, we have a problem. In 2 weeks, we're doing the combined concert with the jazz band, and the jazz band's not going to be there." The director of the jazz band called me earlier today. They got an opportunity to do a show in Chicago. It was too good of an opportunity for them to turn down. I demanded that they take it. And I said, "Our boys can fill this up. We've got 40 minutes of time. We can do about 10 minutes of material from last semester. I need you to come to me and tell me how we're going to program that other 30 minutes. If you can do a solo or a duet or juggle a chainsaw, come see me. If you're not awful, you're in." And so two of the guys in the group, Glenn and Paul, had talked about getting a quartet together because they said, wouldn't it be cool to have a quartet where we could go to sorority parties and meet chicks and get free beer?
I'm like, I know where this is going. This is genius.
This was a genius idea. And so immediately, because I am gregarious in nature, Paul came to me and he's like, "Hey, dude, are you interested in being in a group?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." I mean, I didn't even ask what kind of group. It's like, "Yeah, yes, I'm in. I'm in." Doing what? Singing. It's like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So it was me and Paul and Glenn. And so all of a sudden, the three of us are standing there. I mean, literally, it's like Paul is taller than me, and we're standing next to this guy 5 feet tall. And Glenn says, "You know, if we got one more really tall guy, it'd be like three big guys and a little guy. It'd be funny." And so I turned around and I looked at the bass section and I was like, "Let's go get this guy." This guy was 6'6", operatic singer, very, very serious bass singer. And I said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this for the, you know, that concert in Grayling. And if we had Glenn and Paul and me and you, it'd be three big guys and a little guy and it'd be really funny." And the guy's like, "That's stupid." And he walked away. And I'm like, and it didn't work.
It's a good thing because I feel like he'd be like Pete Best. into your Ringo,
yes,
right?
exactly. Exactly. That guy, he's the manager at the Wendy's in East Lansing now.
So he turned down your opportunity for big things.
He turned us down. And I turned around one more time and I saw Mark Stiles. And he was, vice president of the Glee Club, very well liked. All the ladies loved him. And so we're like, hey, man, what are you doing? You want to sing in this thing? He's like, okay. And so we got together. We learned 2 songs very quickly to audition. We learned My Wild Irish Rose and Hello, My Baby. Both barbershop tunes that we learned from the music library. We went and we got the accompanist from the Glee Club, and she did all the parts for us. And she's like, here's this part. And, we go and audition. We're like, hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. And the Glee Club director is like, that's great. What do you guys call yourselves? We're like, we don't know yet. And Glenn says, 3 Men and Glenn. And he said, well, Glenn, no offense, but what if you quit? And we're like, yeah. And he says, how about 3 Men and a Tenor? And it just kind of stuck. And this 3 Men and Glenn, we had joked about it. It's like 3 Men and a Baby, is what we were.
And that movie was probably out around that time.
It was relatively recent, within the last 5 years or so. So it was somewhat in vogue culturally. People would get the reference, and then as time went on, it got to be more and more distant history, and it caused some problems. If we could go back in time, we might have changed the name. Although I battle with myself about this because it is almost damn perfect. When you see the group, you're okay. I get it.
It's fitting.
I get what it is, but you have to see it first. And so I do think that it held us back a little bit with audience members that might have thought that it was opera, or might have thought that it was barbershop, or might have thought that it was old people music, or something. There were lots of little reasons why, especially men, might have been skeptical. And I'm not going to go see some tenor group, And I think there was some of that. And invariably, we could pick these guys out in the audience. We'd come out, and you could see the guys who were dragged there by their wife. And they're just sitting there like, it's going to be, what the hell? And, the first song, they're like, second song, they're like,
you're winning them over slowly.
Third song, they're like, and then all of a sudden, we're doing some Motown, and they're singing, just my imagination. And they're into the show. And we could watch this happen with like I say, again, largely guys who thought they were going to hate it and ended up loving the show. And one of the things that I found really particularly rewarding with the group early on is that it was very universal. Kids loved it. Little kids loved it. I think little kids love the sound of the harmony, and it's something that you don't hear often enough, especially when it's like really stripped down, when it's just the 4 of us on stage and we put the mics down and it's just the 4 voices in the room. There's really something truly primal about the human voice in harmony together. It's magnificent. And that's one of the things that I've loved. I've loved that element of the show. Every single performance that we get the opportunity to do that, to put the mics down and say, this is what it sounded like in the old days. That's really pretty special.
That's so cool. It's so cool because you took this and hearing the story of how you kind of formed, you just like look around and grab Mark, and 32 years later, trying to do my math.
32 years later. Right. Exactly. And we've toured all but 7 states. We've been to Europe several times, Canada. We've always wanted to go to Asia. I'd love to go. If it's in the cards, it would be nice to go do a tour in Japan. I think that Japanese audience would love the show based on experiences that some other friends of ours have had. Paul Cooper is this guy. He was our director for a long time. He was with the band The Nylons in the 80s and the 90s. And he said, aside from the United States, the place we were the biggest in the world was Japan. And they just love a cappella music there. And a lot of people have said over the years that our sound is very similar to the Nylons. This is very similar, it's 4-part harmony, similar types of music that we chose to be the library of our group. So very similar, pretty likely that a Japanese audience would really resonate with our show, or that our show would resonate with them rather. So that's something I'd love to do at some point in time. It's all a matter of, I think, alignment. Right now, we're not set up to be able to do that. I'm still very, very heavy day to day in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And, leaving tomorrow morning early to go to a conference and thinking, can I really do this? Can I really get away this week? I'm going to miss 4 days. And I think, man, if I'm this tied down right now, how could I do a 2-week tour of Tokyo and Japan? And so it's not quite in the cards yet. But I think everybody's still loving it.
Still got that interest.
Still loving it. We had the busiest Christmas season we've had since pre-COVID. We did about 13 dates before Christmas this year. And the audience reaction is every bit as refreshing as it ever was. And from that, I mean that we walk away refreshed, feeling like, man, I love this. And it's not like, oh God, here's the same old show. Every day is different. Every night the show lands a little bit different. There are some things that are, fun little bits. And that's part of why the show stays fresh for us, is that those bits are always ever changing. And the response from the audience is ever changing. So that makes it really particularly interesting for us. It's almost like this 32-year-old science experiment that's taking place of how the audience is going to react to this given situation. It's really neat.
How does that relationship grow over those 32 years? I mean, again, you guys were just kind of like placed together, right?
Dude, I'm telling you, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because every one of us has been extremely close to every other guy. We've all had our moment where it's like, I'm not getting along very well with this guy at the moment, and everybody knows it. And the worst case scenarios is when the audience maybe even notices it. And that's not really been the case for us most of the time. Limited to maybe a handful of shows where it might have been obvious to somebody. And we're at a beautiful moment right now where it is this loving family, this brotherhood of guys. Glenn's father just passed away last week, and we got together and we had dinner, and a good cry, lots of hugs, lots of stories. We're as much the tribe for each other as anything, and that's really crucial, I think, in everybody's life. You said this right at the top of the hour. To find your tribe is one of the greatest things that you can do, and we have. And some of us are fortunate to have multiple tribes that we belong to. And that's where I find myself right now. But these are the guys that have been there for 32 years. And when the chips are down, I'd not rather be surrounded by anybody else. These are
awesome.
These are the dudes.
I just think about like how you get thrown together and you do this group and you do that one performance. Then how do you then decide we're going to take it from here?
Yeah.
And 32 years later, how does that develop?
It's really interesting because after that Glee Club concert, I mean, really, that was the goal. We got together to fill up time in that concert. And after the concert, we're hanging out by the pool in the Holodome. And some guys from Glee Club are like, hey, are you guys singing the spring concert? We're like, I don't know. Hey, Dr. Johnson, are we singing in the spring concert? He says, yeah, learn 2 more songs. And we're like, Okay. And so we learned 10 more songs, and we put on our own little concert at Hobie's, and we sold tickets for, $2 each. And we had 70 people come to the show at Hobie's. I swear they did not come for the music. They came for the enthusiasm because we were just like, hey, you got to come to this show. We're going to be at Hobie's on May 15th. Can you come? And all of a sudden we kind of built this little crowd, and we did our thing at the spring concert for the Glee Club. And that summer I called these guys up and I'm like, hey, we're going to sing at the art fair in Ann Arbor. And we went and we sang at the art fair, because we sang at the art fair in East Lansing that spring before everybody was done with school. I was like, man, that was really cool. You see how we drew a crowd and we got some tips, and all of a sudden we're making money on the street corners in Ann Arbor. And it's like, guys, we could make some money doing this. We could have a lot of fun doing this. And
get to the sorority houses.
We could, yeah, exactly. It started turning. And my first job that I had out of school, I worked for Reader's Digest in their school fundraising division. You probably did this at Owasso Middle School. You probably sold magazines for Reader's Digest. And if you subscribe, 40% of it goes back to the school. So it's really, if you're going to renew your magazines, Mr. Johnson, you should renew them through me, because, it'll help the school. And everybody did this. And it was great career. I loved it. And while I was doing it, I was selling the group, because I would be talking to the principals and they'd say, so Chuck, how did you get into this whole magazine thing? I see you wear your band jacket from Michigan State. Are you a musician? In fact, I am. I also sing in this group called 3 Men and a Tenor, and we do school assemblies. And all of a sudden we started getting school assemblies, and we started parlaying that into public performances. If we went to enough schools in a given area, all of a sudden 3,000 kids had seen us. And then we'd go back through with these flyers and say 3 Men and a Tenor at this performing arts center. And all of a sudden the people were coming, because kids would go home and they became our little disciples, going back to mom and dad. Mom, Dad, 3 Men and a Tenor came to the school today. And there were these 3 big guys, and there was one little guy, and the big guy, he was like, blah, 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 blah. And then the little guy was like, and they're really awesome. They're going to be doing a show at the Lebowski Center. Can we go? And
love the
first of all, think about this, man. Think about this. Your kid, who you're trying to get to be interested in anything but their Game Boy, is like, I want to go see a concert of 4-part vocal harmony music with you. It's like, yes, we're gonna go. let's get some tickets.
Yep.
And so we started selling out auditoriums in Owasso, in Midland, in Detroit, and all over, and the key was always, Jason, we never sold out in Detroit. We never sold out in Lansing or Grand Rapids. We sold out in Dexter.
In Owasso.
We sold out in Owasso. We sold out in these little places where there was a little community theater, and the community was the thing. So it all comes back to this again. This love of the small town and this, community connection. There's a theme here.
If anybody's listened to all 148 episodes, you understand there is a theme here, and it's not just connected just in Chuck's story, right?
Right.
It's a theme here, and when you listen to people's life and their life stories, success leaves clues. Your stories are data of a soul. As you're sitting here and you're telling your story, I just finished this book called The Pilgrimage by Paulo Coelho. If that's not a tongue twister,
that is a
a
mouthful for sure.
But the whole ending, and not just, I guess I'm going to ruin the book for everybody, but the whole secret, and you got to read the book to really understand it. The whole secret to success is enthusiasm. And so I love how
really think that's true.
You brought that home, because you just had this group and you're excited about it and you're having fun. And you're going out there. And no, you're not even a Lions fan or football fan or whatever. But going back 2 weeks ago, Lions are getting beat at halftime, and they come out and they ask Dan Campbell, "What'd you talk to the team about?" And he's like, "I just told them they just got to go back and have fun.
Yeah,
they got to go back and loosen it up. They got to go have enthusiasm, right? Like it's the secret there. Like when you're out there and you're enjoying and you're having fun, you're playing with the crowd, and you guys are vibing. Like that enthusiasm, that energy is attracting more.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting. Do you know the nomenclature of that word? I love the word nomenclature.
I'm like, ooh. I love that word.
The etymology of the word enthusiasm. It is enthus, which means to bring in God. And so I think that's a very interesting, choice of words. And I feel very much on a spiritual level, like the things that we do, that we give our hearts over to, that we have enthusiasm about, are the things that are successful in our life. The things that, again, all of these things that I've been able to be successful at, it's manifold. It's good for me, but it's also good for you. It's good. Yeah. It's great for the audience. When the audience comes to a 3 Men and a Tenor show, they leave somehow feeling better. When somebody hopefully picks up the newspaper at the end of that experience, hopefully they've read something that connected them a little bit more to the community, that made them feel a little bit better about Dexter or Chelsea or Celine, a little bit more informed. Maybe they know about, the new, base camp restaurant. They're going to go try that out, and their lives are enhanced and enriched by being a part of that. And so I think that the word enthusiasm, I think, is, you have to really think about, what are you giving yourself over to? How are you benefiting your fellow humans? And, what energy are you putting into it? And not to get too religious, but I think that it's not a mistake to use that language.
I think you're absolutely right. It's not a mistake. It's intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a lot to that, to live in intentionally and a purpose-driven life, where your purpose is to serve people as much as it is to serve yourself. Yeah, you have to. There's no mistake when you get on the airplane. They say, put your own mask on first and then help the people around you. You got to put your own mask on. There's no doubt. But by God, if there's somebody next to you that needs some help, you do it, And
I love, again, how this all ties together, because if you've been listening to the top of the episode, it's like, as you're listening to, as me, I'm listening, and I think people listening to you talk, it's like, oh, I was going along and I found this farmer, and then I got this opportunity, and then all of a sudden I became like director of the theater, and then I became director, and then all of a sudden I own a newspaper, and then we created this little group, and then all of a sudden we're touring for 32 years. It's like you stumbled upon it, right?
Absolutely.
But it's when you live your life with that intentional enthusiasm, people want you to be a part of.
Yes.
They want to bring you in.
Right. Exactly. Interesting. I talk about that experience of being on the plane. I'm going to Florida tomorrow for this publishing conference. I just mentioned that the other day. Do you know there are 3 types of people that go to Florida? There are snowflakes, snowbirds, and snow frogs. You know what the snowflakes are? Snowflakes, they fly in for 1 or 2 days.
Okay.
Snowbirds fly south for the winter, and snow frogs go there to croak.
I've never heard the snow frogs. I was waiting on the edge of my seat. That's awesome.
It's political year. I've got a couple jokes here. We're going to break it up just a little bit here, just to have a couple jokes in here. So this is a political joke. I've got two, and I'll keep it ecumenical, so everybody can laugh at themselves. W was coming back from Georgia. He had been visiting the governor of Georgia, and he was carrying 2 pigs as he stepped down the steps of Air Force One under each arm. And the Marine at the bottom of the steps sees these pigs, and he sees W, and he salutes, and he says, "Nice pig, sir." And W says, "These aren't just pigs. These are genuine Georgia Razorbacks. I got this one for Dick Cheney, and I got this one for Don Rumsfeld." And the Marine looks at him and says, "Good trade, sir." This morning, Hillary rolled over and she said to Bill, "Listen, I promise I won't be mad. I just want to know, after all these years, I just want to know, how many women have there been?" And he said, "Well, let me check." And he reaches under the bed and he pulls out this Nike shoebox and he opens it up, and inside there are 3 empty beer cans and 2 $20 bills. And she says, I don't get it. What's up with the beer cans?" And he says, "Every time that I had sex with another woman, I drank one of these beers. I put the empty can inside the box." And she said, "Oh, well, I there are only 3 cans in the box. I guess I thought it was more. I guess I know Jennifer Flowers and Monica Lewinsky, and it must be that press secretary. I knew it. What's up with the $20 bills? Is that your beer money? It says, every time that the box got full, I took back the returnables.
Hilarious.
Dude, I got to tell you, I got the biggest kick out of your kid calling you out for doing your own podcast. And
Isn't that awesome?
That's very cool.
It was super awesome. It's it's 15-year-old. They're going to be 16 in April. And,
Yeah, right.
I started putting up the clips on TikTok, and so that's where you go.
Oh,
when you want
yeah.
the kids to pay attention.
Yeah, right.
What I have a dad? Oh no, I'm just joking. Yeah, he's on TikTok. So it's really cool though. He'd been watching and flipping along, and he was like, to get that out of the blue. Again, it was 11:30 at night, and I'm like, who's texting you at this time? Oh, wow, that was really cool.
Well, I love that. And I think one of the greatest joys that we have in life is to watch our kids go through sort of these milestones. And, first of all, that your kid is even listening to your podcast at all.
Yeah.
Is huge.
I feel good about it.
You got to feel good about that. That's a beautiful thing. But secondarily, that there's appreciation there. And not just mild, but very strong appreciation. I really appreciate, Dad, what you are doing. That's really meaningful. And
this is what he got me for Christmas. So
I love that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
This past year, my daughter has gone to work for the newspaper. She's our layout designer for the paper now.
Oh, super awesome.
And I love that. So on Sundays and Mondays, I work with her quite a bit, mostly remotely. We've been together a couple days, putting it together. But, we've both had a huge learning curve, learning Adobe. And, I had to learn how to do it, early on in the
whole layout.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, in a pinch,
yep.
If I had to lay out the paper next week, I could.
Well, we talk about grit, right?
Yes.
And again, it's all those learning experiences and looking back at what didn't you know then?
Oh,
that, you've expanded that
Right.
knowledge. Podcasting. When I started this back
Right.
in February 2020, I was sitting at my table with a GoPro, and there was so much learning and so much.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And now we're here, and people ask me, how'd you do it? And, and it's that experience. It's the grit. It's the failing.
Yeah.
It's the learning. It's,
One of the best jobs I had, I worked at WELM in East Lansing, the public access TV station. And I remember going into the control booth, and there was this hippie, Brian, that worked there. And I just sat down at the desk next to him, and they're like, hey, Chuck, go learn how to edit from Brian. And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do this. He's like, hey, man, don't worry about it. There's a lot of shit here, but let's just take it one column at a time, man. Okay, like the volume on your TV and the color and the contrast and all that. That's all up here. It's just like it's a little bit more complicated, but break it down and let's start at the monitor. And this is it. And he said, now let's go down this line. And this is just all those frequencies. It's like you got, bass and treble on your radio at home, but here we've got all of these frequencies. It's kind of like an EQ that you might have if you got kind of a cool stereo. I'm like, okay, I'm following. He's like, this is a special filter right here. I don't even use this most of the time, but if we've got some video that comes in and it's a little blue, we turn on this filter and it color corrects. And I'm like, okay. And we go through and we're all of a sudden learning these things, and I've used this one, and I've used this one, I've used this one, and all of a sudden you've got this whole little arsenal of tools that you've learned. And what was daunting before is just like, these are just the tools we use. And welcome to the world of podcasting, where, 3 years ago you didn't know what you're doing, and now you could crank it out yourself if you had to.
Yeah.
Sure is nice to have.
I was going to say if I had to. God, that sounds so painful. I love you, Grant.
Jason, that's my cue to leave.
Not everybody has a Grant in the other room. I can tell you that.
By the way, I have to give this shout out because we didn't talk about this, but I did the solo episode that we were referring to a couple weeks ago. In Grant was awesome, and we were chipping back and having conversation. But at the end, he came in, he brought himself on camera. I'm watching through the other day, and I see not expected to be on camera today. When you did that, I was laughing so hard at that. That was funny.
That was a blast. Yeah, I did my own title card, and it just says Grant LaFave was not expecting to be on camera today. as I'm adjusting my monitor on this side of the class.
It's always more fun to have two peas in a pod.
Oh, it's fun. Yeah, 2 peas. So again, if nobody has not been at Chuck's world famous breakfast, I highly recommend it. But I want to talk about that too because that's been, and I haven't been since COVID, so I've got to get back out and go to them. But tell us a little bit about the events and what you're doing with the charities.
Well, it's so interesting. So I do put on this breakfast once a month at the Holiday Inn Express on Zebra Road, and it started at Office Evolution.
Yep.
Because I had an office at Office Evolution. And the week I moved in, I knew Dave and I didn't know anybody else. And people were just kind of passing by and zip. And it's like, hey, I'm Chuck. And I said to Dave, man, I'd really like to get to know the people who are here. I feel like everybody kind of brings their own thing. We've got a lawyer, we've got a mortgage guy, we've got just a couple scientists that are doing this interesting science project. It would be really cool if we could get to know each other and find out who is here. And I just feel like I haven't had the opportunity yet. And he said, oh, okay. Well, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, what if we did like a little, after hours, a little get together, and we serve some drinks. And it's like, well, I don't know about the alcohol, and that might be its own can of worms. And I'm like, okay, well, what about a breakfast? And he said, well, then that we could do. And I said, listen, I love making omelets, and I've got this little, portable, stovetop, and I could bring my thing in and chop up some vegetables and stuff and make omelets. And somebody could bring French toast or something. We could have a little breakfast and get to know each other. It's like, okay, let's do it. And so we picked a date like 2 weeks later. And it was just for like I think we weren't full. Office Evolution wasn't full yet. There were, I think, maybe 15 of the offices, and there were several people in the day spaces. But this is still like only 4 or 5 months into the existence of Office Evolution. So I'm very early on here with this. And it was great. It was this little community builder within that little microcosm that is Office Evolution. And all of a sudden, everybody kind of knew who everybody else was. And the next couple days, it was like, oh, hey, Chuck, right? And we started to know each other, and there's a little community building going on. And that Friday, Dave said, that was really, let's do that again. That was really good. And I said, yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it the last Friday of the month. And he said, okay, yeah, sure. And so the day before the next breakfast, he said, do you have enough food? Do you think I've invited a couple of people, we've got some potential clients that, might be coming, maybe 5. And I said, yeah, me too. So all of a sudden, instead of being the 20 people in the office, it was 30 people because we had these new people. And all of a sudden, everybody's kind of vibing like, hey, here's some potential business that's happening here. And I have something to offer to this person. And things started kind of happening within this space. And, Office Evolution is special to begin with because there are all of these really interesting professionals, and they're sort of in this emergent space where they're all growing. And so some really cool things can happen because they're flexible. And all of a sudden things started to happen. and business was happening at these things, and more people were coming, and I was inviting 20 people, and I was inviting 50 people, and all of a sudden it was like, oh hey, that's the CEO of Cottage Inn Pizza that's here. Oh hey, that's the guy who the CEO of Menlo Enterprises that's right there, and all the really cool people were starting to come into the fold at these breakfasts, and it's like, oh, that's the governor of Michigan right there. That's cool, or the
cool.
former governor. Yeah, it's like all of a sudden this is really a thing, and it peaked out the last Friday of February 2020.
Yep, I
we
was
had
there.
the biggest breakfast ever. Dave came to me almost panicking. He's like, hey. I hope the fire marshal doesn't come. I think we might be over our numbers a little bit.
I specifically remember that event. It was like,
and it got to be like 11:30, and he's like, Chuck, I think we need to start kicking people out because there some of the people who work here are saying, hey, when is everybody going to leave? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll start pushing, and so all of a sudden it was like, Dave said, we might need to rethink this. I think we're getting a little too big. And then the world shut down.
What I love about that is like, I was a guy that was in one of the extra rooms because I ran into somebody. We ended up having a one-on-one, and we like connect Dan McPherson. Me and Dan ended up connecting. We ended up talking for like 2 hours, and then we met up for lunch later on that week and met for another like 3 hours. And then I was on his podcast. He was on mine. We were like back and forth, and so we grew a good relationship from that. But I remember specifically, like, there was a ton of people, and then I was just gone for 2 hours in a room somewhere.
Yeah, and you came back out, and the party's still going. We're still pouring mimosas at 12:30. It's like, hey, does anybody else want mimosa? Oh my gosh! You talk about playing hooky.
Yeah,
that was the wildest. I mean, that was the closest to like the Wolf of Wall Street experience that we ever had at Office Evolution. But it was also.
I just had a picture pop in my memories the other day of like you serving breakfast. And
Leah.
Nancy, and oh man, there's a few awesome people in that picture. Yeah,
I think my favorite promotional piece from all of that. Rob Marshke, who I was working with at that time with Cade Advertising, he shot video of me flipping an omelet, and he's like, "Here, I'm just setting up the shot, and I've got the pan," and he was rolling, and I didn't even know, and I've got the pan here, and I'm rolling. I'm like, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?" And he says, "Okay, go ahead and flip it," and I'm like, phew, and it comes back down and thud lands in the pan perfectly, and somehow he shot it in slow motion and didn't realize it, and we played it back, and it's like,
oh my god. I've got to see this video.
And then the look on my face, I'm just like it was hilarious, man. I love this video. And it's so funny because there's this girl in the background, and she's just kind of watching like, and it goes up. She's like,
eyes get big. We need to see that video on social media. That's great.
Man. I love it. I just love the video. It's and I don't know if you know Tim Marsh. It's Tim Marsh's daughter, Morgan.
Okay.
Who just happened to be at the breakfast.
The only reason I know Tim Marsh is he was the French toast guy.
Yeah,
he was the French toast guy.
He was the French toast guy.
I met him because French toast is my favorite, and we talked a lot.
Yeah. And Tim is the guy who, if you ever get into any sort of cybersecurity trouble, he's the guy who's going to bail you out.
What's so funny is he was like flipping French toast. He was like, "Oh, got to fix an issue," and he was like in there like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "IT, got a cyber issue," like blah blah blah. And he's like doing some stuff, and then he comes back and flips the toast. I'm like, that guy.
Yeah. One of my clients is getting attacked right now, but I'll be right back. Can you watch that for me for a second?
During COVID, I had somebody reach out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to do IT, and I see you're connected to this Tim Marsh guy. How do you know him?" I'm like, "He makes a great French toast."
He makes great French toast.
Like,
exactly.
He seems like a great guy. He seemed like he was on top of his stuff. He makes a great French toast. I'd recommend him. I don't know.
Is French toast like a protocol in cybersecurity? I wondered. Yeah. That's hilarious.
But it's just funny, you don't know how you get to meet people. And then literally somebody asked me for a referral to them, you know?
Yeah. Pretty incredible.
But so after COVID and now what are you doing now?
So now we decided that we were going to reboot this. And we started, honestly, I'd already had COVID. Everybody at the paper had already had it. And like real live events were starting to happen again. And this was along the same time that WWBA, we were talking about, guys, enough with the virtual Zoom social hours.
Yeah.
Nobody really is into it.
Yeah.
Nobody's showing up. There are three of us that are hanging out, having a glass of wine, like, oh, hey, happy hour. It's like this,
people
frankly, is bullshit at this point. And nobody wanted to do it anymore. And so I remember you and I being very much in the camp of, guys, we have to have a live event. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be something where we actually engage with people in person. And so simultaneous to that first WWBA mixer that was outdoors at the session room, I got together the first breakfast. And we had about 25 people that came. And the next month it was 35. And then, of course, everybody's lessening their provisions for COVID and all of this. And we had only...
Are there provisions anymore?
No, I don't
I
think
was
so.
going to say,
I don't think so.
lessening, or does anybody even care? I don't know.
But I mean, we're talking now almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This was in, 22, early 22.
There was still...
There were still people very reluctant to do this. And we got it going. And as that year went on, thank God, people became more and more comfortable being out and doing stuff. And now we're, not quite at the 120 people still there at noon. But this last breakfast, it was interesting. We had 45 registrants and 75 attendees. So
what? Did you have enough?
We had enough. We ran out of everything. We ran out of eggs. We ran out of bacon. We ran out of sausage. We had a smattering of, various vegetables still cut. We refilled the coffee twice. And that's awesome. That's exactly what I want. I want to run out of stuff and say, hey, make sure you register next time. Yeah. And, starting at the next breakfast, we're going to say, if you're registered, go through the line. If you're here and you didn't register, if there's still food, we'll serve you when it's done, because that registration goes to the nonprofit. And so if you're just a freeloader and you're just here, because there are a lot of people who come, and I recognize there are a lot of people who come just because it's a happening and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it, and I'm going to show up at the last minute and I'm not really going to eat, but man, if you'll make me an omelet, I will.
You make me an omelet, I'll eat. You twisted my arm. You got me.
So, there are a lot of people that I guilt into saying, hey, there's the lady from Wave right there.
Yeah.
You go give her $10.
Because to talk about the charities, because I love this part, and that was always a part of even the breakfast then. There's a charity that you'd invite.
It wasn't always. It was, like the last...
Towards the end,
The last 6 times we did it, I said, Dave, you know what? We've got to, right now, we're just having breakfast and people are just talking. But we've got a gathering space here where we could do something. And what if we gave a nonprofit an opportunity, because we've got 30 or 40 or 50 people assembled here. What if we gave a nonprofit an opportunity to speak? And so we had American Cancer Society come. You and I had just done that event, very, very recently. And, so I had, was it Christina? Is that right? No, Kathleen.
Kathleen. Yep.
Kathleen. We had Kathleen come and speak for American Cancer Society. And Dave's like, wow, that was great. We should do this every time. I'm like, yeah, damn right we should. And so we built it up, and we had Ann Arbor Film Festival, and we had the Encore Theater, and we had United Way. We had so many great nonprofits. And then when we came back and we started doing it again a couple of years ago, that was a must. It was just like, okay, we're going to feature a nonprofit and we're going to get a sponsor to pay for the food. So it's not just coming out of my pocket every time.
Yeah.
And so I don't make money on the breakfast. It's kind of passive for me. I put a hell of a lot of time into it.
Yep.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and I harangue people to do it. I get people to volunteer, and most people who volunteer to do it are very, very happy to do it. Like Elizabeth, oh my gosh, she works at Trinity Health, so I can only count on her because she works the shift on Friday morning, so she can't come to the Friday breakfasts. But when she can come on a Thursday, man, that lady is just back there automatically cracking eggs and, chopping the bacon up into little bacon bits and, saying, oh, hey, you're almost out of asparagus. And chuck, 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 chuck. She's got more asparagus for us. It's beautiful. I just need more volunteers like that. The world needs more volunteers for, like that just see it, that just see what needs to be done and just do it.
Yep.
That's a brilliant thing. So often I think that people are reluctant to just step up and say, oh, looks like, I could help. They're going to be out of asparagus. Yeah, look, there they go. They're out of asparagus. It's like, get your ass behind the table.
How about?
And cut some asparagus real quick. If you see it, help out.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck.
Do you mind if I could
do
jump in?
you need some more asparagus? I'm like, oh my, yeah, please. Please, absolutely. Every situation in life is like that. And for most situations, much more dire.
There's so many opportunities to make a difference.
Without question. Yeah.
And I think it's like, go out there and make that difference. I think I say this all the time, it's impossible to go do good things for people
Yes.
and you not get your something out of it. And I'm not saying like go knocking on the door. Remember, Chuck, when I cut that asparagus that time, you didn't ask me. It's not like that. But when you go out and you do difference making things, when you just take initiative and it's like, I'm going to help Chuck because I want to, people notice that.
Yeah. And not just because you want to, but because it needs to be done.
It needs to be done.
And
that's a good clarification too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that we should all be aware of, the things around us that need to be done. And that it would benefit somebody else if you did it. Those are easy things to do. It's so easy. And I think it starts as simply as, just having a little more courtesy in your life. And when you're at the door, you say, oh, hey, are you coming in too? And you let the person behind you in.
Absolutely.
There's a lot to this. And we could be a much better society. Driving is such a pain sometimes, especially in rush hour, because we suck at merging. You know why? It's because me first. I'm gonna go first. And if you were just like, hey, you want to get in? You go ahead. You go ahead. If everybody was just a little bit more thoughtful of the other on the road, a little more mindful, it would flow a lot easier. And everybody we could take a chill pill right there and bring it down just a minute, man. Don't you think?
I think, and I think that is a masterful way to bring it home and wrap it up, because out of it all and everything that we talked about enthusiasm, and we talked about community and all the things that really are the underlying important things. But at the end of the day, from day one of meeting you and watching you interact with people, I see that you do those things. You do those things to make somebody feel good, to make somebody feel special. Whether it's you're introducing them as a speaker, you're introducing,
yeah.
You go out of your way to make people feel really, really good. And so
you want to know what it comes from?
Yeah,
I can tell you exactly what it comes from. It comes from knowing what it's like to not have that. I was a really awkward kid, and picked on, somewhat ignored a lot, and it hurts. It hurts to be ignored, and it hurts to have people not be mindful of you. And I'm not saying this for like a pity party, like, oh Chuck, you poor boy, because I certainly figured out my own way to get on people's radar.
Yep.
At some point in time, comedy became my device that I used to, even though I was kind of an awkward kid, to be like, hey, Chuck, you're a little weird, but you're all right.
You're funny, man.
You're funny. Yeah, exactly. And that put me on people's radar, but not everybody's on everybody's radar. And there is somebody that's just walking up to the door, and it's like, you could just take a second. It's just a second. And it doesn't cost you anything. Nice is free.
it's free. And like, I did this, and I've talked about this a few times on this podcast. But I several years ago, I had went to a Panera Bread, and there was a guy that was the barista working behind the counter, and you could tell he was having a bad day, and he was just kind of short and rude with everybody. And I was waiting in line, and as I was waiting in line, I was like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to put a smile on this guy's face. Right, that was my only goal, was to help this guy, just give him something to like turn the day around, because I just saw that whatever was weighing on him. So I get up, and I'm same thing as you. Humor is my first self-defense mechanism.
Sure, of course.
Like growing up, and I can make people laugh. Okay, like okay. So gets up, and I come up, and he yawns. I'm like, oh man, they don't feed you enough coffee in this place. Like, what's going on? And like everybody behind him is laughing. What do you want? So I put my order in a large coffee, and I'm trying to make small talk with them, and doing my normal thing, and my enthusiasm, right? I'm trying to rub my put my enthusiasm off on them, and so nothing's working. I order my large coffee, and he takes my money, he comes back, and he gives me this little tiny cup of coffee, and I was like, oh shit, this isn't gonna work. I'm like, I apologize. I don't know if I made a mistake and said small coffee, but I definitely have a long trip. What can I do to get a large coffee? I'm like, I'll pay for it, whatever. I just, so he starts pushing in the buttons, and is like, you can see steam rolling off his ears now. And he's like pushing the buttons, and he can't figure it out. So now he's got to go back to his manager. And he's like, I got to go back. And like, so I'm like, oh, this guy, now I ruined his day even worse, So he goes back, and he comes back, and he's like, you know what? My manager just said it's okay. Here, just take your coffee. We're gonna keep it the same price. I'm like, man, I see what you did there, and I really appreciate it. You didn't have to do that. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I saw how you didn't, I saw how you took responsibility. And you went back there, and you got me hooked up. And I just want to say I really appreciate it. I took a $5 bill, and I gave it to him. And I was like, I just really appreciate that effort. He's like, thanks a lot. It was like, boom, I got him. And it took a $5 bill, but it took, maybe like reframing what actually happened. But all of a sudden he kind of took responsibility for it. He's like, I did do that, didn't I? All right.
Amazing power in a $5 bill.
Amazing. But so I left that. And the whole point of the story is I posted something on Facebook, and at the time, and I was like, just a challenge. It doesn't take much to change somebody's day. We have the power. Yeah. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take any money. We have the power to look at somebody, smile at them, hold that door open for them, say, "Man, I love your hair," like, or whatever it is. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a shallow compliment, but just making an acknowledgement of somebody. We have the power to change and impact somebody's day. And so I threw this challenge out there, and it's so cool, because at the end of it, it's a couple days. I threw out the end is like, what I've learned, and what everybody else should learn too, is it isn't hard. It's not going out of your way.
No.
It's not hard. In fact, it's so rewarding. The conversations and the things that happen, the opportunities that open up when you go out and you purposely see people.
And you probably become a little addicted to that, actually.
You do?
Yeah.
And then people are like, Jason, why do so many people want to be around you? Like, I don't know, man. I can't figure it out.
I can't figure that one out. Exactly.
Like it's life, sales, relationships, it's really not that hard. Like, at the end of the day, no matter if we're selling or, whatever, we're growing relationships. At the end of the day, we're dealing with people that want to be seen and heard and felt. And we think about it like, I had a friend, told the story a few times too, but I have a friend that last year I met up with her to do a podcast at her studio. She has an office, and so I went out there, and she was telling me about her mom had dementia, and her mom's since passed away, but her mom had dementia, and she was like, it's really cool. She was like, this is my first time that I've been out of the house. We got a lady that's taking care of my mom, and we took this process of kind of slowly weaning her mom. Like her and her dad stayed in the house with her mom while this lady would come visit her over a course of several months, because she was like, my mom forgets who we are. My mom like kind of forgets who people are, and we don't want her to see, oh my God, there's this strange woman in my house. What's going on? And so I'm like, well, what's the difference? How'd you know now's the time that you can leave your mom there? And she's like, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. She was like, my mom, like this lady shows up in her only commitment is my mom. She listens to her intently. They have a dialogue. She laughs at her jokes. She's like, she's just there 5,000% for my mom. There's nothing else going on in the world but her attention that she has for my mom. And she's like, my mom doesn't remember. Like she forgets things all the time, but and she doesn't even know who this lady is most of the time, but when she walks in, she starts sobbing because she's fulfilled a need she's fulfilled a
Wow.
need that, like, she's like, my friend Stacy admitted that even she was like, I'm sitting here and I'm taking care of my mom. She's like, but I've got my business going. And she's like, I've got my other life and things going on. And so my mom's talking. She's like, but fine, I've got an email I got to answer. And so I'm not really listening because, and these things are going on. She's like, it's not that I don't love my mom. It's just life is going on. And then this lady comes in and that's all her only job. And so she fulfilled her basic needs so much that she doesn't even know who she is, but she cries and is in tears of joy and happiness whenever this lady would show up.
Jason, it's so funny because what I think, you've just told the story of what happens with people all of the time. It's an old adage that people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
And that can be long-term. It can be somebody from high school where you see him and you're like, oh, I've got a great feeling about this guy. Or, oh man, yeah, I remember that guy. And this lady, it's just fast-tracked for her because, her short-term memory is failing her at this point in time. And so immediately she's like, I don't know who this is or what they're all about, but I know that this person cares about me.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful.
But it's on that large scale. If we just think about that, it's so easy. We just make it so hard. And again, even the jumping in and helping, some people, it's not that they don't want to, it's that they feel like, oh, maybe I'll be overstepping. They start getting this imposter syndrome or this, negative self-talk about maybe by grabbing the asparagus and start chopping, Chuck will be like, why are you infringing in my space?
Yeah, maybe,
they're tired of their,
maybe. Yeah,
that's part of it. Not everybody, but a lot of times it's that fear. Same with sales. Like, why didn't you follow up with that person? Because I didn't want to be pushy.
Right.
I didn't want to bug them.
Yeah.
Well, you told them you were going to call them, and now they're like wondering where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to bother you, but you sure could use a mortgage payment.
You sure could. Yeah.
Pretty worthwhile, that one.
I'm so glad I mentioned that about noticing and taking care of people, because that was a beautiful story. I'm so glad we mentioned that.
Yeah.
Chuck, this has been awesome, man.
A real pleasure. Always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure.